today I'm going to show you how to make the face mask that I published on my blog a few weeks ago. Before I show you how to make it, I just want to explain why I decided to develop this pattern and some of the features of the mask. So firstly, I hadn't found any patterns that sort of catered for everything that I wanted from a mask that would suit everybody in my family. So I carried on with this. There's a couple of features. One thing that I hadn't found with anybody else's mask was a detachable nose wire, and I just felt that with constant washing that probably the wire would go rusty, or with constant bending it would end up breaking. So if you could remove it for washing, or when it breaks, you know, this would just save the mask. So I actually used 2 pipe cleaners and pushed those into this channel. Just wind the pipe cleaners together, and I found that works quite well. But since making this mask, I've found there are now purpose made nose wires that you can actually buy, which look quite good, but I haven't tried just yet. One of the other features is that you've got an optional filter pocket, so for people that are shielding you might want extra protection. So I deliberately didn't put a seam down the centre front of the mask so that you've got this more square front, so the filter will just sit there if you want to do that. And again, if you're making this in a very lightweight fabric so it's very comfortable, you might want to add a filter. So that's another feature. The other thing is that I played around with different ideas for attaching it to your head, because I personally find that these just simple ear ties just pop off my ear. So you can use that, it seems to work for a lot of people, but I've also did this version where the tie actually goes right round your head like that, and I find that fits me. I'm happier with that. It stays on, doesn't pop off. The other thing about the whole design is that there's really enough room between your nose and your mouth to talk, so if you've got to wear them walking around the shops, it's quite comfortable to wear. So that's basically the design. If you download the pattern, this is what you'll get. So you've got I think there's 7 different sizes. I'm making the medium for me, which works quite well. I've also made the extra small for my kids, which fits them really nicely, and I made the large for my husband, and that fits him. But play around with the different sizes if you want to make this. So let's get started. I'll show you how to make it. So once you've cut out your pieces, you'll have two pieces of the main mask, and then you'll have two pieces for the nose channel. So I'm not making one with a filter pocket. If you do want to make a filter pocket, you just need to make a seam in the middle, and there's instructions on the pattern and on the blog how to do that. But this is quite a fairly thick fabric, and I'm fairly confident that I'm happy with this. So to start with, we need to make the nose dart. So work both pieces at the same time, and do the same process on the lining and the outer. So we'll start by stitching that. There's only a 1 centimetre seam allowance on this pattern, so if you start by sewing that, and do the same on the other piece. You can just do a little bit of back stitch at the start and finish of the seam just to make that strong. So it's starting to take shape. So then we've got the chin seam. So if you stitch along here, show go the right way up. So this seam here, again on both pieces. So at this point I would normally press those two seams, but I'm not going to do that just at this second. I'm going to carry on and sew this little hole. You'll have a little hole there in the chin part. So if you bring that together, you see that? So you'll have this seam open. It's like the box bottom technique, so you just literally want to sew across that with your seam centred in the middle of the gap here, and that forms the chin piece. And again, so there you can see the shape has come together. So do the same on your lining piece. Like I said, the seams are very short, so it's really worth just back stitching at the ends to make sure that they're nice and strong. So once you've got two pieces like that, we now need to make the nose wire channel. But again, if you're you don't have to do this, you could carry on and bypass this if you don't want a nose wire piece. So, and also you can customise it further if you want to change the length of this depending on the shape of your nose, but what we want to do is stitch around the lower edge. So again, 1 centimetre seam allowance around there. So there we go. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to trim off the corners so that I can turn this through, and I am going to go and press this now, and while I'm there I'll press the seams open on the nose dart and the chin seam as well. So I'll come back in a second when they're pressed and turned through. So here's the pressed turned through nose channel piece, and like I said, I've also just taken that opportunity to press the seams on here. So now we want to fold this in half to find the centre. You can either put a little nick or just hold it against it. I'm just going to put a nick there. So that needs to, the nick needs to match to the nose seam. So you can just maybe pin that in place, and I'm actually sewing it on just to hold it in place at this point. So it needs to be right sides together onto one of the sections, either your outer, if you're doing the one with the pocket, and just sew that just very close to the edge just to hold it in place. Let's do that. There you go, you've got your nose piece just stitched on like that. So now what we need to do is just put right sides together, and so that nose channel is sandwiched in the middle, and lining everything up again, so your nose dart and chin darts can match up, and just stitching the whole outer, upper edge and lower edge, just pivoting at these corners as well. You can see that, okay. So I'm not really going to need to pin this because it's such a small distance, but you can do if you prefer. That's the upper edge, and do the lower edge. So there we go. We've got both seams, upper edge and lower edge stitched, and like I said, here at these corners I've just pivoted, so I'm just going to cut into that to make that a little bit easier to turn through and stay sharp. But there's no real need to do much trimming because it's a very small seam allowance, and then just turn this whole thing inside through one of the open ends. So now at this point I'm going to press this whole shape, so keeping this is your nose wire channel, just keeping that poking out at the moment, and just press all this so it's a nice sharp edges. So here's the pressed piece. I've got the nose wire channel above, and what I've also done is I've actually pressed in the side pieces ready for the next stage, but I'll show you that in a second. So the first thing to do at this stage is to turn your nose wire channel to the inside and literally just stitch along the long edge, reinforcing really well at the start and the finish, just so that that holds together while you poke wire in and out of it. So I'm going to just quickly do that, and you're stitching very close to the edge of the inside. There we go. Like I said, I did design this with pipe cleaners in mind, but if you're using something like one of the purpose-made nose wires, you could actually just make this channel with a piece of bias binding, or make it to make it much narrower, because I think they're quite a lot thinner, the nose wire things that you can buy. So once you've got to that stage, the last thing really to do to finish the mask is to fold in these side panels. So I've just turned it in about 0.5 and then to that angled bit to form the channel for the ear ties. If you're just using standard elastic and you're just going to thread that through and make an ear tie, just go with that sort of size. 1.5 is about right. If you want to make this with a covered strap, I would probably go just a tiny bit wider, just because this becomes more bulky. So I'm going to show you this part in a second. So I am going to do that on this because this is my preferred mask design for me. So yeah, I'm just turning that in a little bit further just to give a little bit of extra room for that that tie to run through. And again, good bit of reinforcement with back stitch at the start and the finish. So there we go. So you've got, so basically that's a finished mask now. You could just put the ear pieces on and go for it with that, or if you want to do this, you'll need to cut a long strip of fabric. You might need to work this out depending on the size of your elastic. So you want twice the width of your elastic plus a 1 centimetre seam allowance, and I also leave around about 1 centimetre for movement because you don't want it to be so tight. and then stitch this right sides together all the way through the length. So I'm going to do that to start with, and then I'll show you getting the right size. So I'm not going to pin it, I'm just going to go for it. There we go. I am going to trim this as well. What I've done is I've literally cut a strip 4 centimetres wide across the width of the fabric, but really as long as you've got probably 1.5 times the length of the elastic you need to go around here. So what I would do at the stage you've got to find out what size is, at the stage you've got the mask to when it's like this, is thread some elastic through without the cover on it and just hold it onto your head, because the first time I did this I pulled it quite tight and I found that the whole mask kind of bunched up on my face like this. It was really uncomfortable. So this is actually less than you think. You don't need to pull it really tight, it just needs to sit flat and it stays really well. You can pull it through the channels to adjust it a little bit, but basically I pull the whole thing on my neck like that. So this goes around the back of my neck, through the channel and up, and I've just joined the two flatly at the top there. So yeah, so that's how to get the size. So once you've got the size of the elastic, you just need at least 1.5 times the length, so you've got a good bit of movement, or a bit more, it doesn't have to be exact. So what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to trim this down to about 0.5 centimetre and then turn it through. And pretty much the only tool I use for turning through is a loop turner. These are sort of designed for those rouleau loops down the back of a wedding dress, but I find they're really great for pretty much any loop turning. So just push the loop turner. Like I said, you can use a safety pin if you want, but it's going to take a long time. But push your loop turner right the way through to the end, hook the hook into the end, and then just tease the fabric over the hook. As soon as you feel it move, you'll be away, but this is the fiddly bit. It's just getting it over that initial lump. There we go, loops out. Let's turn that through to the right side. I mean, again, you can do this, you could do the head elastic without any cover on it. I just like it to look a little bit neater, and it feels a bit more comfortable if it's covered, but entirely up to you. And I think that's the thing we're all doing really, we're really customising all the different face mask patterns to what suits you the best. So once you've done that, we just need to get your piece of cut elastic, find a safety pin and thread the elastic through. So as long as you've got your sizing right, you just need, like I said, you need the finished channel to be a little bit wider than the elastic, but not too much wider. Just start to feed that inside the elastic, but don't let the end sink inside. So I'm going to carry on feeding that through. So there we go. Once we've got the elastic all the way through the entire length of the channel. As you saw, I just stitched across there to hold that from going in, and now we can insert this, or you can stitch the other end just to stop that running any risk of sinking inside. Let's just quickly do that. And then take your safety pin and push the elastic into the channels. Right the way round, through up the other side. There you go, you've got your neck piece there. Like I said, you can move it inside. It's the right side, and just try and make sure your elastic's not twisted, and bring the two ends together. I normally just bring just neaten, just chop off the elastic just to neaten the ends so that it looks nicer. And then lay one end on top of the other, and then all I do is just zigzag that side and that side just to make that flat and not feel bulky, and that's it, complete then. So let's just quickly do that, and then we're there. It's a little bit fiddly, this bit, but it makes a nice flat finish if you can do it. There we go, you can just trim off the ends. I'll give that a better trim in a second. But there we go, finished mask. So like I said, just pull this through. You can bring that join into one of the ear channels if you want to make it look really neat. And there we go, finished face mask. So, I hope you enjoyed that tutorial, and hope to see you again soon. Thank you very much.